This is the PlayStation Portal that's been around for over a year and was hugely unpopular when it came out. But Sony recently made a change to it and people have really changed their minds. Now with this new update, is the Portal finally worth buying or should you skip out on it? We're going to talk about that in this video. Hi guys, my name is Emmanuel Tall, and after over a year, I finally decided to make this purchase. So when this Portal was initially released, it was intended as simply a remote player. Now, what that means is that this device on itself is not a standalone gaming device. When it came out, you initially had to have your PS5 turned on and connected to a network, and then this device also needed to be connected to your network, and you could only play the games that were in your library. With the newest update, Sony now allows for beta streaming. Now you still need a PlayStation subscription in order to use that streaming service, but you no longer need to have your PlayStation 5 on, and you actually no longer need a PlayStation altogether if you only intend on using that streaming service. Now I do want to spend about a minute to talk about the build quality of the PlayStation Portal. Now looking at it, you're going to say it looks real familiar to a PS5 controller. Essentially is. It's a PS5 controller cut in half with an 8-inch LCD screen put in the middle. Now, the great thing about that is if you have a PS5 and you've used the PS5 controller and you like it, then this is exactly the same, all the way down to the haptic feedback triggers that also comes with this device. Now, other than that, it's fairly simple. It's a very simple device. It has a power button, has a connect button, and it has 2 volume marker buttons. It has a PlayStation home button as well. And if you're wondering how do you use the trackpad like you would on a PS5 controller, the screen is a touch screen, so all you gotta do is tap on it and it works just the same. Now, the other great thing about the PlayStation Portal is that it's extremely light compared to other handheld gaming devices. Now, compared to my Steam Deck, this is probably less than half its weight, and it makes sense because there actually isn't much going on in here other than it being a remote screen. It doesn't have a very powerful processor because it's not actually doing any computing inside the Portal. And it also does come with speakers, so you do not have to worry about audio. But speaking of audio, Bluetooth devices will not work on the Portal. You need to have a PlayStation Link device in order to connect. I wish PS would have allowed for that, like connecting your AirPods or any other Bluetooth device, but you will have to rely on either the speakers or PlayStation Link, like I mentioned. Now let's talk about the performance of the PlayStation Portal. Now, let's talk about it as a remote player first. So how it was initially released is using this to remotely play into your PS5. And the gameplay and performance is completely dependent on your internet connection. If you have a slow internet connection with a slow upload speed and a slow download speed, this may not work at all, or you'll encounter a lot of lag. In either scenario, I really don't recommend using this for low ping games, especially where it requires very little latency. So first-person shooters online, you probably don't want to be playing on the PlayStation Portal. I have a very stable internet connection with at least 25 megabytes of upload and over a gigabyte of download, and even I encounter latency time to time. Now, there's 2 ways to really connect the PlayStation Portal. You can either be connected on the same network, so if you're in the house and you want to be, say, gaming from a different room, you can be connected to the same internet connection, or if you're out of the house, you can be connected to a completely different internet connection. All you have to do is signed into the same PlayStation account. In either or, the PlayStation 5 needs to be on in order to be used as a remote play. Like I mentioned, this is essentially a remote control. There actually isn't any computing that's happening inside of this device other than it's streaming the video onto the LCD here. Now, the second way and the second performance is strictly streaming. So like I said, Sony updated this device in order for beta streaming. So that means you no longer need to have a PS5 connected to the internet in order for you to use that subscription, but you do need to have a PlayStation Plus subscription. And even that still depends on what kind of internet connection you have, but not so much the upload, but only the download. Now, I'll put a screenshot of what the minimum upload and download requirements are to see if this works for your internet connection at home. Now, talking about the beta streaming services that's now available on the PlayStation Portal, you do need to have a PlayStation Plus account, and you are limited to the library on the PlayStation Plus network. So you don't have access to every single game, but I will say that the library is pretty expansive and will continue to grow over time. The flip side to that is that this still works as a remote player. So you can still access all the titles that you have on your PlayStation 5. And if you're like someone like me that likes to game in bed and the PlayStation 5 isn't in the same room, then this is the perfect use case scenario for you. Now, my gaming experience using a PlayStation Portal has been mostly positive. And I say mostly positive because there are very little instances where I do encounter minor lag or minor latency, but it's not a huge issue. I've played all genres from single player RPG to racing games like Gran Turismo 7, and it's actually been very, very fun playing it. The experience I get playing those games on the PS5 translates directly to the Portal. Now, in terms of the beta streaming services, I do have a PlayStation Plus subscription and I have used it time to time, but I've personally been using this as a remote player. Now, the big selling point with the new update is that if you don't have a PS5, but you want to get into PS5 games, then this is the cheapest way of doing that by purchasing the PlayStation Portal and subscribing to the PlayStation Network. Now, in terms of battery life, I'm getting between 4 to 5 hours, depending on what settings I'm playing the games at. Because you have to remember that there's actually not much computing going on in this device. It all depends on how strong you have the haptics set to. So if you set them to low and you set your brightness levels on the screen to medium to low, you're probably going to get between 5 and 6 hours easily. Now, like I said, because there's no GPU in here that's doing a lot of computing, it's all just remote play. The device itself stays very cool. It doesn't get hot at all. So if you are concerned about that and you've come from a handheld device like an Asus ROG Ally that gets really hot, you don't have to worry about that with this here. Now, the visual experience is not the best because I am used to a 4K TV with very vivid colors. All this is an LCD screen, and I can see the contrast is not the best. I wish that this was an OLED screen, something that the Steam Deck has or the Nintendo Switch has, but for cost-cutting, reasons, Sony went with an LCD screen. It's not a breaking point, but you will notice that if you're used to 4K gaming on the PS5 on a good TV, the image is going to seem a little off just because they're not used to it. Now, in terms of the packaging of the PlayStation Portal, you get the Portal itself and you get a charging cable, which is done via USB-C. In about 2 hours, you can get full charge on the PlayStation Portal, which is pretty standard for a lot of devices. But other than that, the packaging is pretty bare bones. So if you're expecting a case or anything like that, you don't get it. But on Amazon or any aftermarket websites, you can get a lot of accessories and carrying cases for the PlayStation Portal if you'd like to. Okay, now to the question, who should purchase this device? First and foremost, if you're someone who plays your PlayStation 5 only occasionally and you have no intention of playing it outside of the room that it's installed in, then this simply is not worth it. Remember, this is not a standalone gaming device. This is only a remote player. Now, if you're someone like me that does have a preference of going around the house and playing it and not having to worry about dragging your PS5 and plugging it into new TV, then this is convenient and you could justify spending $200. Now, me personally, because I still like to play on a large screen in my basement, I am gonna end up returning this. Now, if you're someone that has been paying attention to the updates and you now see that you have access to the streaming services and you don't have a PS5, in my opinion, the $200 USD price point is still a bit expensive. There is an alternative. You can get a set of controllers that grip onto your phone, and that is significantly cheaper than the PlayStation Portal. So if you wanna indulge in the PlayStation experience, I would start by doing that first and skipping out on the Portal. And that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review and the overview of the PlayStation Portal. Let me know in the comments if you ended up purchasing this PlayStation Portal or if you're an OG owner of it and what your experience is like. I'd like to get your input on that. Now, until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.